All right, hey everybody. Just want to welcome you to another episode of our Realtor One-on-One Hangout. We've got a great show for you today. As always, our co-hosts here, Jim Reifus, and I'm Scott Hollingsworth from Vyral Marketing. We're going to be talking today about providing excellent client service and care, and we've got a special guest here to talk to you about that. Jim, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the guest and yourself, and we'll get this thing going.
Asked my good friend Bruce Levine to join us today. Bruce is a longtime old-school real estate agent who uses technology in his business and more than anything provides the utmost type of service to his clients, whether he's representing sellers, whether he's representing buyers. And I asked him to be here with you today to share that, as well as who his ideal client is. Does he work with everybody? His things that he does on Facebook to attract clients, his client care afterwards, and how he uses Yelp, excuse me, to leverage his business. So Bruce, thanks for being on today and welcome.
Sure, glad to be here, Jim. Hi, Scott.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Now, Bruce is a Michigan football fan, and being a Notre Dame man myself, we do get along despite that, and I think you guys are all going to enjoy what Bruce has to say today. He has a great perspective on the business and on life really in general, and has just joined us here at Keller Williams, what, about 3 weeks ago, Bruce?
That's about right.
Yep, so we're excited to have you.
It's been a heck of a ride already. As you know, I'm not necessarily the kind of guy who pays a whole lot of attention to details, and going from being an independent broker to being affiliated with the largest real estate brokerage on the planet means you got to pay attention to some details. So it's been interesting adjusting, but I'm not letting it interfere with taking care of my clients, that's for sure.
Yeah, and nor should you. We're glad you're here, Bruce, and thanks for joining us today. So, Bruce, why don't you give us a little bit of a background about you and your business, when you started, how you got here, and then just kind of your perspective on the real estate business in general.
Sure, it's a good question, and it's really relevant to who I am and why I do things the way I do. You know that already, and maybe anyone watching will understand. I first started in this business in 1990. The very short explanation, I was extremely fortunate to meet a great world-class real estate mentor early on who taught me the importance of doing things in a particular way. Did that for a long time, eventually got into managing real estate offices and agents, had a major health incident that kept me from working for a few years. When I was finally able to work again, it became very important to me to control my time. And an outgrowth of that was learning to alienate difficult, troublesome people and limit my world to people who had a need that was aligned with my own values. And that, more than anything, has given me a purpose and clearly defined how I want to live each day and how I want to take care of the people that I let into my professional life. So for the last 7.5 years, I've been working as a real estate salesperson, then a broker, then an independent broker, now a brokerage affiliated with KW, here in the San Diego area, selling houses.
Okay, so Bruce, tell us a little bit about your production. How many transactions did you do last year? In fact, I should put it this way: how many buyers and sellers did you help last year, and what was the dollar volume in that? Just so people can
sure. But, you know, I don't have that data right in front of me, but it was around $15 million in sales.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was finally, for the first year, it was more than 50% listings and a little less than 50% buyers. When I first got back into the business, it was overwhelmingly buyers. I was dealing with the bubble. I was working with people who were kind of at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum trying to buy houses, a lot of first-time buyers. And as they've matured and become more affluent, so has my client base. I did about, I don't know, somewhere between 25 and 30 sites last year.
Yeah, so we had you, including your off-market transactions last year, about 32 transactions for $17 million. So nice, solid business.
Right. I do have data for 2015, and these are transactions that I know are solid. These are either listings I've taken but aren't on the market yet. Buyers I represent who I know are committed to buying. And I'm already, let's see, of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 have closed. Four have closed of a total of 16 transactions that I know are happening. 11 of those are listings, 5 are buyers. It's almost $9 million in sales volume with income to my company of pennies under $200,000. And that's sitting here February 3rd. So things are good, and we're well on our way. And as you know, I'm also about to make a major announcement, some major changes to my business, which will be coming to light in a couple weeks.
Yeah, if you build your team, so good. So yeah. Bruce is obviously, he's a very credible person in our industry. Does a great business by the numbers. But what we're here today to talk about, Bruce, is what a great business you do on behalf of your buyers and sellers. I know that
before we get into that, real quick, Jim, okay. if you don't mind, I just want to tell the viewers that we have the Q&A app open, and if you have any questions for Jim or Bruce throughout the entire Hangout today, just shoot them over in that Q&A app, and we'll make sure that we get everything answered for you.
Great. Thanks, Scott. I was homesick yesterday. I'm going to do all that I can to keep the coughing to a minimum. I've got some tea being delivered here shortly, so hopefully that'll help. So Bruce, back to your business. I know that you just finalized negotiations on a home for a buyer that you're representing. Yesterday or the day before, where there were 10 or 11 other buyers bidding on that property. Share with us, if you would, your take on why, and actually what the listing agent told you on why your offer was the one that was selected.
Like a lot of real estate agents, I think what the listing agent told me is only partially true. We live in an industry where people just don't ever tell the whole truth of the whole story. It's crazy. What they told me was that there was we knew there were 2 other buyers that were right around where we were in terms of numbers. We knew that when we wrote the offer. We tried to make ours just a few pennies better. But what we didn't know was that as we were doing that, either the best number 1 or number 2 other offer that was out there also increased their offer, and they were sweetening it to make themselves more attractive. The listing agent called me and said, have your client contact this lender. We want to get them pre-approved and cross-qualified with our lender. And I'm not kidding. Within 15 minutes, my client was pre-approved by that lender from the time that they asked. And the lender called the agent and said, this person is gold, and they went with us. And he said it was that responsiveness. And, let's see, there were 3 counteroffers. We had, and we improved our offer 2 or 3 times during the transaction. So this dragged out over 4 or 5 days. I was sending his assistant texts at 6 o'clock in the morning. I wrote one of the counteroffers at 2 o'clock in the morning because I was awake watching that movie you and I were talking about. Yeah. And over a period of days, they saw, okay, Bruce is crazy. He's unusually focused. His clients are doing everything we could possibly ask. That's who we want. There was urgency there. We showed urgency. That's my favorite word.
So your client performed as they were asked to perform. Yeah. And then then you were told also that because of your communication and your responsiveness, that helped seal the deal as well.
Right. I try to be. I'm going to say this over and over and over again. I'm going to read from some notes because I want to make sure I have every descriptive word in here. I tell people I'm ready, I'm working, I'm engaged, I'm present, I'm intense, I'm focused, I'm motivated, I'm caring, and I'm helpful, and I'm communicative, and I'm doing that all the time. Mm-hmm. So when an opportunity rises, I am doing all those things, and for the people who want and need that in their client's life, it's a real attractive proposition. And you can't be those things if you're focused on a lifestyle. And you can't be those things if you're trying to be some fancy schmancy real estate influencer. You can only be those things if you're actually engaged doing them on behalf of your clients and thinking about their best interests all the time. Uh-huh. That's what I do.
Okay, good. So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I hate the phrase, does that make sense? Everybody says, does that make sense? It's a closing question.
I tell you it didn't.
Stop me from saying, does that make sense?
Will do. Scott, did you have a follow-up question you wanted to ask on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, you went through the list of things that you try to be. Now, my question would be, is there a different way that you treat the first-time home buyer that's coming in, maybe a younger
Oh yeah,
person, compared to someone that's bought a few houses, maybe spending a little bit more money?
sure.
And how do you give them the service and the quality of care that you do to each person?
Well, I'll start by using. I have an established process when someone is a seller, new seller or experienced seller, or if they're a buyer, new buyer or experienced buyer. I have a list of questions I ask everybody before I'll even think about taking them on as a client. You know how you go to the doctor and they ask you all those questions. Do you have any coughs? Do you have any, and they don't feel bad that they have a clipboard in front of them. They're not going to memorize it all. They don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to make a mistake. So I go through those questions. When I get to the question mark, I shut up, I stop talking, and I let them answer the question. And if they won't answer the question, it's usually because they want to control the process, and I know they're not going to be aligned with the way that I want to work. How do I handle a first-time buyer or seller versus someone who's more experienced? I don't know. My process communicates to people that my job here is to make sure that you feel extremely well informed. I'm going to be as transparent as possible. You're going to feel very well informed, and that's the only real outcome that I'm attached to here. Because if I help you become really well informed, you choose not to sell your home or buy a home, or you choose to hire someone else who's better aligned with you, I think that's just wonderful, and I'm going to love and care about you just as much as if you hired me. And I mean it.
Right.
And so that's my process, and that's why it's helpful to anybody who comes in, whether they're more experienced or not. Now, if they're somebody who has bought and sold, I have some clients who I would call permanent clients. They buy, they renovate, they resell. I don't have to do any presentation with them. I just DocuSign the listing agreement to them, and they send it to me. There's no presentation at all. That's nice too.
So what I hear is you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
When you're working with buyers, those questions are far more than, how many bedrooms and baths, how many square feet, what's the price?
I don't get into those questions about a house until after I've decided to let them hire me.
Awesome, awesome. And then you set the expectations on what they should expect from you and your service, and you use those descriptive words that you mentioned earlier in
Right.
talking about that.
Right. And when it depends whether somebody comes to me referred and how high a quality the referral is. But if they're a stranger, I'll ask them to do things like go to Yelp and read the Yelp reviews that people have posted before we meet, so they have an awareness of what other people in their own words have said. And I even ask them to read the filtered reviews, the ones that don't adequately meet Yelp's algorithm. I still can't figure out why I have like 15 or 17 reviews that didn't make the filter when they're genuine reviews, but every review I have on Yelp, filtered or unfiltered, is 5-star, except for one that was written by someone I never met, never represented. He was the neighbor of a house I sold, and somehow got it in his head to write a bad review about me. And so I have them read those things, and they usually come into my office with a very, very high level of trust. They're used to dealing with your typical real estate agent. It's very self-evident to them if they've read those reviews, but I'm not that.
Right. So I mean, when you go out on a listing appointment, I hear agents all the time talk about this two-step listing approach where they'll go out beforehand and drop a package on their door. And I'm assuming that you don't do that, but you'd rather have them read those reviews on Yelp so that when you walk through the door, they have a pretty good idea already of who they're going to be.
Right. I will be totally honest. Sometimes I do a two-step. Sometimes it's a one-step. But my two-step is different than the one that you described. My two-step is I need 5 minutes to see the inside of their home before I can comp it. And I just say to them, you can meet me at the house or you can leave the keys, which would be best for you. I literally will be in and out in less than 5 minutes. I'm not there to have a conversation with you. I'm not there to see the wallpaper you put up when your baby was born. I just need to see the house, basically to find out how it comps out against recent sales. And then I need to get out of there because I have other things to do. But yeah, when I meet them, I'm fully prepared, and I'm able to, it's interesting. I always pull the comps. I have my entire listing presentation. It takes 20 or 30 minutes. It's all on an iPad. Sometimes I'll pull the comps, but I don't really review them very carefully other than to determine that they're the right comps. I don't really get my head inside the numbers. And then when I show up at their home and I get to that part of the listing presentation, I tell them, I said, I pulled the right comps. Let's see what story it tells us. And I walk through the comps with them, and they and I are seeing the data for the first time. And usually it says to them that the property's worth X, and then I ask them, what do you think your house is worth based upon the data? And they tell me, and I said, great, let's list it there. Get your house sold. And it's a really simple process. I'm not telling anybody what to do.
Right.
I'm helping them be I'm helping great quality people who have aligned values be really well informed. So it is only natural that they will hire me. Right?
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't they, right?
I agree.
So with that approach, let's talk about your numbers that you were talking about on Facebook the other day on the transactions of the listing side. Why don't you go ahead and cover that for me?
Sure. That mentor that I mentioned taught me that the truth is always in the data. The market is smarter than you. It's smarter than me. It's smarter than all of us put together. It's brutally honest, right? Yeah. So let's see. You're alluding to a Facebook post I made that included a bunch of data, and at the time I had some listings that had closed already. They closed in the first few days. They happened to sell exactly at list price. So for the 2 or 3 closed listings, they had sold it at exactly 100% of list price. In 2014, my listings sold for 100.3% of list price. In 2013, which was a better market, they sold at 101.8% of list price. And in the 2 years of 2013, 2014, of all my listings, they went into escrow on an average of only 9.1 days. And that's because I am very careful about the listings I take, and I make sure that they're priced correctly, I make sure that they show correctly, and I make sure that we provide access to them correctly.
Well, those are great numbers, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks. But I do that because that's in my client's best interests. The kinds of people that I want to work for, they're motivated, they have a time deadline, they want to get top dollar for their home, so it's incumbent upon me to do everything correctly to help them achieve that. And putting it out at too high a price, or allowing a tenant to be in possession of the property, or limiting showings, or not having professional photography, all of those things take money out of my client's property, so I won't do it.
So, one of the things that we talk in our team meetings about to agents is that, as an office, our office has the top rating for list price to sales price in San Diego County at about 98.3%, 98.7%.
It gets better, isn't it?
And that's why we're excited to have you here. You can move the needle up for us. And when you're already in the #1 position, if you can move the needle upwards, that helps. But I think that's important to people. It lends credence to the fact that you know how to price properties. You know how to move properties quickly. I mean, really, why should a house linger on the market any longer than 9 days?
Yeah, the value of any property is what the value of the property is. It doesn't become a higher value because you listed at a lower price or listed at a higher price. Right. However, the actions that take place are different if you listed at a lower price or a higher price. If you listed at a price that's too high, everyone goes by and says, oh, nice house, price too high, I'm not going to go see it. Whereas if you price it below list price or just a little below list price, the world of qualified, eligible, motivated buyers reprioritizes their lives to respond to what you have to offer. And you get multiple offers from quality people, and they compete for what you have. And that's the position I want my sellers in.
Well, so one of the things that I would like for agents to take away from this is know your numbers. I mean, Bruce knows his numbers there, and although he'll tell you he's not a data or numbers driven person, he is, because he knows those numbers. And I'm just going to throw this out there, Bruce. I'm going to ask the obvious question: do you use those numbers in your listing presentation?
Which ones?
The ones that you just went over about
about the 101.8% and the 9. Oh yes. People here's a great thing. People come when we get to the part of the listing paperwork where they say, well, how long of a listing do you want? Most agents are in a position they want a 6-month listing agreement. I don't want a 6-month listing agreement. I don't want a 3-month listing agreement.
Right.
If somebody who is properly aligned with me and is doing everything that I want, I'd be just fine with the 30-day listing agreement. And frankly, I don't even need that. But right, I'm so comfortable in my skin because I exclude all the garbage from my world.
So just so we're clear, it would be a good exercise for every agent that's watching this to go through and figure out what your list price to sales price ratio is, what your office and your company's list price to sales price ratio is, if you haven't had any listings, and what your average days in the market are, because those are things that ultimately are important to sellers. They don't want to hear about your number one. They want to hear those
you
numbers.
Also have to be truthful with what those numbers. You got to be truthful with what those numbers are. You know, and I know that if you ask agents about what's their average time on market, they're going to exclude from the calculation if a property was listed for 6 months and then withdrawn and freshened up, and the listing was freshened up and put back on the market at a lower price a week later, they're not going to count the 6 months. They're only going to count the second period. So if people want good results, you have to be truthful about what you've been doing and what you've been accomplishing and how you're going to change to get there. And usually the way to change effectively is just be truthful with yourself.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, good. Anything else you want to add that you do particularly with sellers, Bruce, that you think anybody can learn from?
With sellers, let me just think. You know what? Most everything that I do that's most effective is stuff I do on the front end, the stuff that I've already outlined. Yeah. Everything else really just flows from that. I like my clients being in control of the process. And if all the things that I described happen on the front end, if we get a great offer from a great buyer who's truly qualified and motivated and steps up, and they have an agent with a good reputation who I know who has clients who do what they say they're going to do, we can just jump right at that offer. We don't have to have a predetermined strategy. I don't have to wait a week and get 20 offers and be overwhelmed administratively with constant texts and emails. We can control the process.
Right.
If I have something that I know is priced right, I can do that, or I can simply say that your emails and your texts aren't going to be replied to. Show the property, get me your best offer. We will respond on Thursday by 5 p.m.
And I think that's going to become even more important here over the next few months. Is for those of you not in San Diego, well, you really should be. It's about 80 degrees today. But for those of you not in San Diego, our inventory is extremely low right now, and what we know is that we've got about 2.6, 2.5 months of inventory, total seller's market, and I'm not sure that that's going to change. So we're going to continue to see multiple offers on really good properties that come on the market and that are in good condition, in great locations. Those are they're flying off the shelves. And most of the inventory that's there isn't that great.
Yeah, I don't know who the other buyers were on that property that we were speaking about where we were the 11th offer. Mm-hmm. But assuming that most of those buyers were reasonably serious or reasonably well qualified, that means there were 11 people qualified to buy a property that was in the 1.1, 1.2 range.
Right.
And 10 of them are going to fail on this one and are going to have to either buy the next good property or suck it up and buy a lesser property or change their plans or rent or something like that. That's pretty stunning.
Well, and that's one of the conversations I think is important that agents have with buyers who are getting stuck on price, because this market isn't going to go down anytime in the near future. And here's what we know. The smart buyers are buying now, because when they know this, to your client's story right here, they bought at let's call it 1.1. Guess what? The next one that comes on that all 10 of those other people are going to be interested in is coming on at 1.1 or 1.15 or 1.2, and now they've paid more for it. You're better off to pay more now than paying more later, because the more you pay later is going to be big.
I'm gonna stick my neck out and disagree with you just slightly. Just in the immediate term, like in the next week, you're right. I try not to. I am not Nostradamus, man. I am just a real estate broker, and the market's smarter than me. And whenever I'm meeting with a seller or buyer talking about the market, I say to them, we are working in a very narrow window of time, and this is what's happening now. And the world could change in a week.
Yeah.
And we could go. I'm not predicting anything, but we could end up in a situation where we're in a buyer's market a week from now. World events can change things. There's all sorts of things we can't imagine. All I know is this week, what you said is operative. Definitely.
Yeah. And that's what I was referring to. So.
Yeah, and I'm really careful. I mean, let's face it, our industry as a whole historically is right up there with lawyers and used car salesmen. Maybe we're not quite as bad as that. And we're always saying it's a great time to buy, it's a great time to sell. And I mean as an industry. I don't mean you, I don't mean me.
Right.
And when I say, hey, you better buy now, it's only going to be more expensive next week, then I just appear to be in that category of agent broker, and I don't want to be seen that way.
Yeah, and that's that's my opinion. It may or may not be true, but my belief is it's going to take a while for this market to turn, and it's still a great time to buy. It's with interest rates at 3.5%, and we need to talk to buyers about that too.
They're out of this world right now, Jim. They're just crazy. Yeah, I mean, some people are getting 30-year fixed rate mortgages at 3.5. At their low, the lowest interest rate I ever saw anybody get a couple of years ago was at 3.25. Actually, one person got an interest rate of 3, but that's because they negotiated a seller contribution towards points that brought it down even lower. But in terms of what was actually being offered at a 0-point quote, 3.25 was as low as it's been. And I am an emerging geezer, Jim. I'm 53, not 23. And when I got into this business, I remember that the real estate company I was affiliated with, Long & Foster Real Estate in Alexandria, Virginia, had a huge office party with free booze when interest rates fell below 10% on a 30-year fixed rate. 30-year fixed rate. So
9.9.
Have a little perspective. Interest rates are the same right now.
Yeah. All right, Bruce. Let's shift over to buyers. Tell us what your initial conversation is with the buyer. What types of questions do you ask? What kind of information are you looking to get from that consultation, and then what the next step is?
Sure. I ask them if they're home. I ask them if it's a step to get formally for a mortgage, including all the underwriting and credit and verification. I ask them if they're working with or represented by a real estate agent at this time. And you'd be surprised when I get to the question mark and stop talking how many people hem and haw. And I find that to be a really important question to ask. So those are the sorts of things I ask to before I even get anybody to my office. That's on the phone. When they come into the office, it's kind of like being a bartender. You just got to sit there and listen to them for a while, and they say a few things, and then you come in with your scripted questions. And simple things like, so what you're saying is you're pre-approved to spend this, and you want to be in this neighborhood, and you want 4 bedrooms and 4 baths, show your home like that. Is that right? And you have a time frame. Is that right? You just gradually narrow it down. It helps them understand. And they sign the buyer representation. I sell them a house.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the buyer representation agreement. Do you what?
My favorite subject.
Do you work without one?
Never. Well, sure I do. When I'm representing the seller. When I have a buyer, I always a representation agreement. There's only one exception. That's when I'm buying properties myself. I don't have anytime it's somebody else.
Okay, so how do you introduce that to the buyer? And I mean, obviously you're 100% successful on getting that representation agreement signed. So how do you introduce that and overcome the typical objections?
There aren't many objections. However, as I've started my process by really difficult, troublesome people, and I've asked a lot of questions from the beginning before they ever get to my office. They're the sort of people. That's number one. When I get to the part of paperwork, you know that agency disclosure that we're required to have signed before we show a property that no one ever gets signed before they show a property? You know, you're smiling in a very knowing way like the cat that just ate the canary and you hope the BRE's not watching, right? Well, at this time, I say it's time to talk about paperwork. And there's two documents that are involved. One's required by the state of California. One's required by me. And I hand them to them, give them a copy. If they don't want it there, they can. I tell them, unless they really want to, they're not signing it today. I want them to take these home and read them. Here's what they are. Here are the mutual obligations that the buyer representation agreement lays out on me and on them. And most people just sign it right there or sign it within a day or two of receiving an electronic copy. Occasionally, someone says to me, you know, in fact, it happened the other day. I got a referral from, believe it or not, I have a barber. You know, this stuff here has got to get trimmed every now and again. And we had a nice conversation, and I sent him the documentation, and he called me a couple of days later. He said, you know, I think I'm just not a match for the way that you work. And after talking, and that's fine, after talking with him a little bit, I found out why. He wanted me to show him houses, and he was planning on having a relative write the offer, because that relative would give him the whole commission. So that's why this process, he didn't even understand that was offensive. He didn't even understand that I was right to have asked all the questions and in order to leach out the truth from him.
So Bruce, I've got a question for you, and to backtrack a little bit, you know, one of the things that I picked up that you said earlier was that you choose to let them hire you as their agent.
Yes.
And I really liked that. So is that something that you've done throughout your whole career? And if it's not, can you explain how it's easier to provide a good level of service now that you've made that change to versus before?
That's a fantastic question. I would love to say that I've done it from the very beginning of my career and I've done it consistently. But like you and like Jim, everybody else, I am a flawed, frail human being. And sometimes I have moments, periods of time where I don't do as good a job as I otherwise would. That's why I try to have processes and scripts. They keep me from falling below a floor of performance even when I'm not feeling my best. But most of the time, that's been the approach from the very beginning. I was just there's talent and there's skills, right? And whatever talent you have, that's what people call God-given, or it's just innate. And I don't know how much I have. I have no idea. That's not my job. I don't pay attention to it. But I was really lucky at the very beginning of my career to fall in the lap of someone who helped develop my skills to an extraordinary level. And it was just dumb luck that happened. So from the beginning, I was using processes like this, and it gave me, whatever level of talent I had, an advantage. And,
right.
and it's really why I'm here today. It's why I'm alive. It's why I'm able to continue working and performing at a high level in this business.
Great. And Jim, I just want to tell you, we were catching a little bit of reverb through your microphone when Bruce was talking, so I went ahead and muted you out. If you want to jump in and ask a question or say anything, feel free to unmute.
I think there are probably a lot of people in my life that would love to have the availability to do that on a daily basis. So.
That's funny.
I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna mute because I know it gets broken when Bruce is speaking and my microphone's on. So Scott, why don't you go ahead and finish your questions with Bruce? I've got a couple other that I'll ask when you're done. I think that'll probably be the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we kind of touched on it a little bit with you like to give the same quality of service whether you're feeling well or not. So, I think that's one thing that a lot of new agents may fall into is if they're having a bad day, not giving the same quality of service as they would if they were having a really good day. How do you go about keeping yourself level and giving that same quality of service to your clients all the time?
Well, I think it's because I already alluded to the processes. That helps.
Right.
That helps. That helps a lot. But also, I have another advantage over at least most young agents is that I've been through an extraordinary lot in my life. A couple of divorces, a horrible health crisis that kept me from working for 3 years that really changed my perspective on things. And I use phrases like alienating, difficult, troublesome people. But I could just as easily flip that around and say that I'm looking to attract loving and caring, decent, hardworking, grounded people. Jim will tell you I take enormous pleasure in helping people who can barely qualify to buy a home, people that might otherwise be permanent renters and kind of be on the fringes and never really see the economic opportunities that come with home ownership. And to them, and to more experienced, more successful people, I bring love and care and urgency, and it's really genuine because I'm not here responding to the whims of anybody who contacts me or everyone who contacts me. I'm only responding to the real, genuine, predetermined needs of people that fit nicely and neatly into my universe. And everybody else, I'm very glad to call my friends and colleagues at other real estate companies and say, hey, have I got a referral for you? And that way, people who are difficult and troublesome take up the time of my competitors. And I get paid on the rare occasions where they end up succeeding.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to bring up when we were talking in the green room, I mentioned that you may treat everyone the same way, and you were hesitant to say that. I know that when you're talking about quality of service, that's something that a lot of people hear is treat everybody the same way. You want to tell your side of that and why you think that's maybe not the best approach and how you like to treat everyone?
Sure. I do have processes which would be suggestive of me treating everybody the same way. But I'm flexible and I adapt. I like to say that I treat everybody fairly.
Fairly.
Because everybody is unique and everybody's different. And, the big man or the big woman upstairs wired everybody different. And they listen different and they have different personalities and they have different life experiences. And, you can see I talk a lot, but I listen really, really well and I pay attention. And I try to give everybody the best that I can give them, and that's going to be different for other people because different people have different values, they have different life experiences, and I want to resonate with them in a way that is meaningful to them. It's kind of like profiling them in a way. If I were to look down on it from 5,000 feet, I might think that what I do is creepy, but my clients like it. Does that about?
Yeah, that was the thing that I took away from the conversation earlier is that you like to treat everyone fairly instead of treating everyone the same way so that you don't end up becoming a robot. And
right. I'm not an algorithm. I'm a guy. I'm just this guy from Detroit who, through dumb luck, had his parents move here in 1976, and I went from the fringes of Detroit to the fringes of Rancho Santa Fe and had my eyes opened up to a new sense of possibilities of living. And every day, I still pinch myself thinking, holy cow, am I lucky to be here? Because I could be freezing my ass off in Detroit right now, or I could be living in a community that's become really economically disadvantaged. And I think it's downright miraculous that I'm here. If I were an employee, I'd be a horrible employee. I'm not a team player. I believe that I can implement systems and methods that are better than anybody else, and that's what I do. So I report to me, and I report to my wife.
Right.
like any husband. One other thing that we were talking about before we went live, you asked me a question. I want to make sure we don't miss it. You asked me a question about what I do to follow up with clients after the fact.
Yep, and that was going to be my next question, because it's real easy to give good client service when you're pacing the sale. But what do you do after you close the deal and you still maintain the relationship? How do you continue to give good client service after that point?
Well, I don't do what most real estate agents do, for starters. I don't have a drip system. I don't send out cards and mailers on a regular basis. I don't deliver pumpkins to their house on Halloween. I don't send recipe cards. I don't do any of that. When I come across a good listing or one of my own listings I think is particularly attractive, I might send an email out occasionally, 6 or 8 a year, but nothing that's overwhelming. Very few people unsubscribe from those. One thing I do is every day that I work, I handwrite 5 thank you notes, and I have some nice cards that are pre-printed and they're branded, and I write something to 5 people, and they can be past clients, or they can be prospective clients, or it could be a lender or a title rep that did some great work that helped the transaction go through. It could be somebody like you. And 20 years ago, I was taught by the mentor that I mentioned that the reason you do this is because people love getting thank you cards, and when they get a thank you card from you, they're going to appreciate it, they're going to remember, and when they have a need, they'll call you. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But it took me until a few years ago to realize that that wasn't the reason to do it. And everyone's waiting for the reason to do it. The reason to do it is that if you do something 5 times a day, 5, 6 days a week, and that something is expressing genuine gratitude, and you're not outsourcing it, you're not having some company send out cards that look like they were handwritten, which are not, you're not delegating it to your assistant to write what you send to them by email. You're picking up a card, and you're picking up a pen, and you're thinking up here what you want to say to someone that you like and care about and who has impacted your life in a positive way. And you write something, and you mail it to them. And you do that 5 times a day. And you create in yourself, when you do that, a condition of real, genuine gratitude. And when you go through life grateful for everything you have, instead of, so many people in our business, they try to foster, they try to present themselves as some kind of, lifestyle influencer. And, I'm some fancy schmancy real estate broker. Look, back in the 70s, there was the women in the Mercedes 2-seater with the hats. Nowadays, it's, look at my car, look at I'm successful, all this machismo, or I'm, in a short skirt and high heels, and look at me living this fancy real estate lifestyle, right? I don't do any of that. All I do is thank people. When you're grateful, you attract people who value that, and you make yourself appear genuinely special to the kinds of people that you want to represent. And it's like it's probably the most important marketing I do is the thank you notes. I can't imagine going through a work day and not writing 5 thank you notes. That would be like cutting off my own hand.
Yeah, that's great. So, Jim, I know that you said you had a couple more questions for him. You want to jump back in here? Nope, you're muted.
You're muted. Sorry.
There we go. I was gonna follow up with Bruce on the what he does afterwards. The handwritten note is such a valuable tool, and I think it crosses through more than our business. I've heard, some of the business books I've read, some of the greatest leaders of industry and in other companies do the same thing. They write a handful of handwritten notes every day that they send to people that they've talked to. And I think more than anything, like Bruce touched on, when you come from that space of gratitude, that's what you attract. And when you don't, then you don't attract that. You attract the rest of it. So I think that's a great piece to take away too. Bruce, let's talk about your strategy on social media, Facebook. You're a huge user of Yelp as well. What got you going down that path? What interested you there?
I don't know. I love to talk about it. I don't know. When Facebook first broke, I was not an early adopter of it, and a friend of mine, I don't know, a year later urged me to take another look, so I did. And I started writing about things I was interested in, whether they had anything to do with real estate or not. If you remember, a few years ago, there were a rash of classes, seminars, online and otherwise, about social media and Facebook strategy. And the overwhelming message was separate your personal and your professional lives. Create a business page, do your personal stuff on your personal page, and only talk about business on your business page. And I've never done that. And unless human nature changes, I'm not going to. I found when I started writing about stuff I was interested in, people who were my friends and people who were Facebook friends, those are two different things, they responded positively to it. I'm just a natural-born communicator. I love to write. I love to share what's interesting to me. And sometimes music, sometimes it's real estate, sometimes it's my kids, sometimes it's politics or religion. And anyone who goes through life sacralizing their beliefs in social media is basically saying, I'm not going to be authentic. Well, I want to be authentic. And authentic can get you in trouble. If David Duke was a real estate agent and he goes around being authentic, saying the things he believes, he's going to have a really, really, really small client base. So I'm not saying be authentic if you're not a nice person, if you're a bad person, but if you know who you are and you're comfortable in your own skin, you fall within the range of normal and acceptable, be authentic. That's what most people want. If I alienate someone because I say something politically or about a faith or anything like that, that's okay, because I'll attract someone who I don't alienate. And here's the thing that's really funny. Lots of my best clients, lots and lots of them, are people that I do disagree with profoundly, and they with me about those things. But you know what? We're civil, and we're neighbors, and we're friends, and I don't base my friendship upon whether someone has the same religious or political beliefs as me. I base it on whether they have a high content of character and lots of other things we have in common. So being authentic was huge, and I continue to do that, and will continue to do it. I don't want to pretend to be someone that I'm not, and yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that too, because that's the age-old question. Well, not age-old, but 5 to 10-year-old question on social media, especially Facebook, is do you keep those things separate? I'm the same school as you, Bruce. I think that I can here's what I can tell you people out there in the viewing audience. If you click on Bruce Levine's Facebook profile, here's what you're going to learn. He has a huge eclectic taste in music. It's all over the place. You'll find some of the oddest music on Bruce's page. He's a huge Springsteen fan, which is one of the things that Bruce and I share in common. He's a huge baseball fan and Detroit Tiger fan, and he's not afraid to state his opinion. And I think that's important because you get a really good view of who he is by looking at that. And what's more boring than a Facebook business page, for Christ's sake?
No kidding. Here's another way to frame it, guys.
Yeah.
Can you mute them for a second? Because I can't hear.
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Okay. There we go. You know, if someone looks at my Facebook page and they see that I state an opinion about something and I'm passionate about it and I fight for it and I want to try to convince the people that I'm engaged with that this is the right point of view, but I'm trying to accomplish something. Isn't that what they want when they hire a real estate agent? Don't they want someone who has core values and core beliefs and insists on upholding them? Why would you want to hire someone whose job is to not offend?
Right.
You know, if you're not being at least a little bit offensive, even around the periphery in some aspect of your professional life, I think you're doing a bad job, or at least being less than genuine, less than honest with people. And when we are less than genuine and honest with people, we send a message to our coworkers and our colleagues and our clients and our families that it's okay to be less than genuine and a little bit dishonest with people. And I don't think it is.
Yeah, and I love that you said genuine there, Bruce, you know, because that's the word that was really jumping out at me as you were explaining everything about Facebook. And it really relates back to the same thing that you were talking about, to not treat everyone the same way, but to treat everyone fairly, you know, and it becoming a robot if you treat everyone the same way. And on Facebook, if you're not genuine and you're just posting about business and on your business page, it becomes a robot, and people aren't going to be interested in it, and they can read how genuine you are on there. So I love that you brought that up.
There are services that any agent can subscribe to that will auto-post content that you select onto your Facebook page, and it just makes me, I don't know whether to laugh or cry for them when I see that same content posted on different agents' page within 5 minutes of each other. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you're giving yourself away, one little post at a time, and to the point that you're a commodity and not a very valuable one at that. So.
Right.
And the reality is, remember I talked earlier about, I used all those words, what did I say? I said, here, I have to get my cheat sheet out. Nope, that's not it. But the one where, you know, I'm engaged and present and intention and focused and all that stuff. You can't do what I do on social media unless you are those things. And doing those things and being that way is a conscious choice. So you can't say that, well, I'm going to the beach today, but I'm going to auto-post content, so therefore I'm working. Like, you have to be alert. You have to be aware. You know, whether you're sitting at a desk with a computer or whether you're doing it on your phone or whether you're doing it from your office, you've got to be thinking about this stuff, and you've got to be acting on it, and you've got to be doing it all the time that you're working throughout the day. So.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, basically to recap everything that you've said today, the best way that you know to give good quality service to your clients is to choose who you let hire you as an agent. And the way that you attract the people that you want to work with is by being genuine and not being a robot.
Sure, that's a good way of putting it. That's a really good way of distilling down what I said, because I know I said a lot.
Right. So, Jim, is there anything else that you want to jump in and say? We've got a few more minutes here.
No, I just, you know, thanks to Bruce for being on today. I know it's a huge commitment to take an hour and a half chunk out of somebody who does the volume of business and the care with his clients like Bruce. So, Bruce, thank you for being with us today. Hopefully, everybody out there got, you know, a few tidbits that they can take out into their practice to do more business, better business, whatever you want to do in regards to that. So, Bruce, thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Be able to be helpful people.
You know, and Bruce is, you know, Bruce and I met not through transaction, but we actually met on Facebook and have developed a nice friendship to this point. I think we're more than Facebook friends.
Oh, yeah.
Have developed a nice friendship where, I mean, we've had chats like this probably a dozen times over the last 3 or 4 years as we've gotten to know each other, and it's just great to be in business with great people. So, and I think that's what we've done here is we attracted you because we come from that position here that we really want to be in business with the best and the brightest real estate agents in San Diego County. So, Bruce, glad to have you with us, buddy.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, and for anyone else who wants to be in business with the best and the brightest in San Diego County, Bruce, how would somebody get a hold of you if they wanted to do business with you?
You can go to Facebook and look up Bruce Levine, Facebook/Bruce Levine, or they can find me on Yelp. I'm the guy with no hair. Or actually, it's interesting. I said the way to reach me is social media. I didn't say a phone number, did I?
Right.
I mean,
right.
You could do that. You could do that too. 858-733-0043.
Great. And Jim, I know that we have you on every month, and we definitely enjoy doing these hangouts for you. But go ahead and tell everybody again how they can reach you.
Scott, they can get a hold of me here. The best way is via email, jimr@kw.com. Very, very simple. jimr@kw.com. That's the easiest, quickest way to get a hold of me. But Scott, also wanted to thank you and everybody over there at Vyral for providing this platform for us. I think you guys are doing a great job, a great service to the real estate industry with the content that you put out every week. With having top producers like Bruce on. I know you've had many other top producers on who are just, and that's what you find, people like Bruce who are willing, they know there's enough business out there, and they're willing to share their thoughts and their expertise, and just makes the whole industry better in the long run. So, Scott, thanks again for what you guys at Vyral do for us.
Yeah, not a problem. We love doing it for you, and we really appreciate the kind words.
Good. All right. Well, we'll figure out who we're going to have on next month, and Bruce, thank you, buddy. I really appreciate it. We'll catch you here shortly.
Yeah, Bruce, Jim, thanks. Next month we will be live again with Jim on the 3rd.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
Next month.